All right, good evening, everybody. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Remco Bromett here to our chaplain to lead us in an invocation.
Let's pray together. Lord God, we thank you for the opportunity to meet together tonight in freedom and in safety. And before we ask for your presence on our meeting, our hearts go out to those in South Carolina who have lost their homes and in some cases lost their lives in the floods. We pray that you give strength to the families that have been affected. We pray that you give grace and strength to all the different agencies involved in rescue and cleanup and damage assessment. We also pray tonight for your comfort on those who are suffering with diseases such as cancer that we are thinking about tonight, that you would be the God of all comfort to them. We pray that you keep those that serve our city safe this evening, our fire department, our police departments, our city staff that serves the residents of the city of Milton so faithfully. Give them your grace and your strength and protect them. And last but not least, we ask for your blessing on this city council, and we invite your presence here with us tonight. We ask that your grace and mercy and wisdom will rest upon us as we consider the affairs that affect us all and the quality of life in this city. It is in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Remco. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, October 5th, 2015 to order. Judy, if our city clerk will please call roll and make general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the October 5th, 2015 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on an item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that the individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Kuntz.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
Councilmember Rick Morik.
Here.
And for the record, Councilmember Bill Lusk is not here. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor, for the record, before you move on, I did talk to Councilman Lusk today, and he was not feeling well, under the weather. It came across on the phone.
Again, I want to welcome everybody here tonight. We appreciate you being here. Also, it's an honor to have some of our special guests here tonight as we have a proclamation Councilmember Thurman is going to do on recognizing Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So thank you for being here. And we look forward to hearing any comments we have or any input from citizens. Do we have any public comments tonight?
We do have one general public comment.
Okay.
Sir.
Mr. Mayor, before you move to that, could I get the council to approve the meeting agenda?
Yeah, no, I was just
Okay.
Yeah, I was just asking that, but you're right. I'm not ready to move into the comments yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but I can see where, as I said that, it would make you think that. So I will bring up next, Sudi, if you'll item of the agenda for approval.
Our next item is approval of the meeting agenda. This is agenda item number 15260.
Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. Have a motion for Councilmember Hewitt. I have a second both from Longoria and Morag. Which one of you guys said?
I'll give it to Rick this time.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna give it to Matt if you guys don't.
I'll take it.
You wanna make a second?
Sure.
All right, got a second from Councilmember Coons.
Move on.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, next item is public comment. Public comment is time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There are no discussion on items on the consent agenda or first presentation from the public or from council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of city council in conversation. And when your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes for remarks. Sudi, if you would please call the first public comment.
Our first speaker is Mr. Jack Linden.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Jack Linden. I live at 14810 East Bluff Road in Milton. Two things I wanted to mention tonight. One is just a quick announcement. Sounds like it's on. Okay. Quick announcement about Milton Rose Green next activity, which is our Rivers Alive River Cleanup, which is going to be on the 17th of October. Just wanted to make that announcement. We have lots of volunteers on the hook for this, and it's going to be a great event, assuming the weather holds. The other thing I wanted to make a quick comment about is the ongoing discussion about changes to conventional subdivision code and the changes that have been proposed. I went to the what's it called, the community zoning informational meeting, I think it is, last week, and looked at the current state of that proposed change. And two things I wanted to say about it. One is I'm really pleased to see some of the things that are in there. I like the changes in the undisturbed buffers, setbacks, the changes in the way the entrances to subdivisions would be configured, the addition of a small amount of open space as conservation land. I think those are all really great things. There's one thing that I didn't see in there that I'd like for you to think about and to consider. In talking to people around this community, the problem that I hear most often is people talking about how whenever a development goes in, everything seems to get cut down. And I know there are tree ordinances. I also know there are ways around the tree ordinances. I would like to see something like a undisturbed buffer zone in each lot that's proposed in each subdivision. I don't know what that percentage should be, but if some percentage of each lot were designated as undisturbed, then that would eliminate the clear cutting that goes on and would, I think, give us subdivisions that look much more like the subdivisions that were done in this community back in the 80s and 90s. If you drive around town, you see a lot of subdivisions where the lots have areas that are still heavily treed with obviously mature trees. They weren't trees that were put in back when the subdivisions were built. And I'm not sure why that happened then and why it's not happening now. But if something could be done to make that happen again, I think we'd go a long way towards addressing the issues of the vision, the visual view sheds and the like that we see in our community as these new subdivisions are being put in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack, before you walk away, would you just a quick update on your hazardous waste?
Oh, yeah. Right. I should have thought of that. Yeah, we did the hazardous waste cleanup last past Saturday. It was a whopping success, particularly given the fact that we had lousy weather. We had over 250 attendees, and of the 300 or so that had signed up. So it was a pretty good attendance. And I haven't gotten the numbers yet from EcoFlow, the people that put it on. But at the time when we did it, we were keeping track of the intake, the take that we got, and they were telling us we were well under what they thought the budgeted amount was. So we shouldn't have any issue with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's no more public comments, Cindy?
No more, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to our consent agenda. If you wouldn't mind sounding that item, Sudie.
First item is approval of the September 14th, 2015 special called City Council meeting minutes. Agenda item number 15252. Next item is approval of the September 14th, 2015 work session council meeting minutes. Agenda item number 15261.
Okay, do you have a motion on the agenda, on the addenda? Consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as read by the city clerk.
Second.
Okay, got a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, we can move on to reports and presentations. Sudie, if you'll please call the first item.
Our next item is a proclamation recognizing Breast Cancer Awareness Month. This is being presented by Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Thank you. It is my honor to present this proclamation recognizing October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Milton. As many of you know, this is very personal for me. Last year at this time, I was still recovering from my own breast cancer surgery, still waiting on test results in order to determine what the future plans were for the next stage of my recovery. I was one of the lucky ones. Mine was caught early. Over the past year, my vocabulary has come to include terms like clear margins, triple negative, and estrogen fed. These are terms that the wonderful healthcare professionals that treat cancer patients and the researchers are all too familiar with. 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer at some point in their life. 1 in 8. 1 in 3 women will get some type of cancer, and 43% of men will develop some type of cancer. Great strides continue to be made both in the early detection and treatment for all cancers. The purpose of this proclamation is simply to continue to bring awareness to the early detection and research to further treatment of breast cancer. I'm going to read the proclamation, and then after I read it, I would like everybody, I'd like the council and everybody who has personally had breast cancer, those who have had a family member that has been diagnosed with breast cancer, those in the healthcare profession, and those that have had friends diagnosed with it, to please come forward. Whereas October 2015 is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas breast cancer is the second most common cancer among women after skin cancer, and whereas 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer at some point in their life, and whereas over 230,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer will be diagnosed in 2015, and about 40,000 women will die from the disease. And whereas every woman is at risk for breast cancer, even if she has no family history or other risk factors of the disease. And whereas the efforts of various organizations have made regular contributions to spreading breast cancer awareness through outreach, education, and screening programs, and have empowered women with the life-saving message of early detection and the importance of having annual mammograms. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, hereby dedicate and proclaim October as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Milton, and call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. Given under my hand and seal of the City of Milton, Georgia on this 5th day of October 2015, Mayor Joe Lockwood. Will everyone please come forward?
Dave says he doesn't know of any problems. Oh, there you're on. Okay, he's on.
And I want to thank all y'all for coming tonight. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to me, not only for you to be here, but for what y'all do every day.
Congratulations to you on your
Thank you. Please take that to Linda. A new breast cancer survivor. Thank you. Yeah, you need to take one home for Donna, too. Up here. Give her a product. I want to say a special thank you to Lindsay Harbor of North Fulton, Susan Costello of Northside Forsyth Hospital, and Alicia Silvestri, breast cancer survivor who works with the Milton High School Athletic Department, for coming tonight.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Thurman, for making that very important presentation. All right, Sudie, if we can move to our first presentation, if you would sound that item.
First item is consideration of RZ 15-14, U15-04, VC 15-03, 3503, and 3505 Bethany Bend by Wisdarium LLC to rezone from OI Office Institutional and AG1 Agricultural to OI Office Institutional and a use permit for a private school, Section 64, 1831, to expand the existing school from 2,000 square feet to 8,000 square feet for up to 150 students. A two-part concurrent variance to reduce the 50-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback to a 20-foot landscape strip along the north property line, Section 64, 1091A. And second, to reduce the 100-foot setback for recreation areas to 20 feet along the north property line, Section 64, 1831B4. This is agenda item number 15262. Our second and final first presentation item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Appendix A, Parks and Recreation Fees and Other Charges, Chapter 34, Section 24 of the Milton City Code, agenda item number 15263.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the reading of the first presentation.
Second?
You have a motion by Councilmember Kuntz, second by Councilmember Thurman. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. So unanimous approval for the first presentation reading. We have no items on the public hearing or zoning agenda, so we'll move on to unfinished business. Sudie, if you'll please call the first item.
Consideration to adopt the impact fee ordinance and to create Chapter 25 impact fees in the City Code of Ordinances, agenda item number 15257. This was discussed at the September 14th City Council work session, and first presentation was heard at the September 21st regular City Council meeting. I do have 3 public comment cards and one to read in the record.
Okay.
Want to do this first?
Yeah, we'll be fine with taking our public comment first. What do y'all? Council have a preference on that, whether we hear the presentation or go ahead and we'll go ahead and take the public comment first.
Yeah, that's fine.
First public comment comes from Chelsea Haygood.
Chelsea Haygood, and I'm with the Council for Quality Growth. I'd like to provide some input on the impact fee ordinance and schedule. We were very encouraged by Ms. Field's recommendation at the work session to reduce the Parks and Recreation fee by 50% for the first year and allow the staff to revisit the Parks and Recreation master plan during your full comprehensive planning process next year. We think this is especially important because the impact fee revenue can only fund a fraction of the improvements outlined in the plan and can also not go towards any maintenance or operational costs that will come out of building these new parks. Also, by charging these fees at the maximum amount, which would be the highest in the North Fulton region, the city and the existing residents will then be obligated to allocate that additional funding to follow through with the implementation of the entire Parks and Recreation master plan. So that being said, we'd like to strongly and respectfully urge you to consider the recommendation to reduce the fees by 50% and allow the staff and residents to revisit that parks plan and really prioritize projects based on how they can and must be funded to provide the greatest benefit to the community without placing a higher cost burden on new residents and the development community versus the existing residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Haygood, could you state your address for the record, please?
Yes, it's 751 Piedmont Avenue in Atlanta.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sudie, if you call the next person.
Our next speaker is Mr. Dean Coward.
Good evening. My name is Dean Cowart. I reside at 6365 Stallion Drive. Appreciate your time tonight. I'm here to second the Council for Quality Growth's comments just stated. I'm a builder-developer in the community, and I would encourage you to follow the recommendations of Ms. Field about evaluating the impact fee and possibly starting off at a lower rate. I believe I emailed y'all regarding my concern about the matter, not dissimilar to codes in the building industry. There is a phasing in of those things. We're anticipating things coming in the horizon. This particular impact fee ordinance is hitting me in the midstream of a project, and it's difficult to evaluate and underwrite a project when your rules are changing along the way, and I would just want to encourage you to consider possibly phasing this in over time as opposed to going from 0 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour at this particular impact fee on the residential development community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you please call the next speaker.
Next speaker is Lenny Schumacher.
Good evening. My name is Lenny Shoemaker, and I'm here representing the Atlanta Board of Realtors and the Atlanta Commercial Board of Realtors. We are located at 5784 Lake Forest Drive. Between our two boards, we have over 9,000 realtor members who operate in a 14-county area in the metro Atlanta region, and we're here to echo the suggestions of the Council for Quality Growth. While we totally respect the desire of the City of Milton for an impact fee structure, we frown upon the imposing of the maximum fees allowable for this kind of structure. To go from 0 to the maximum fees allowable by law seems a little dramatic to us and like it may have some sticker shock on the real estate community. Our concerns are that this may deter applicants from bringing quality housing and development to the City of Milton, and that such projects will instead end up benefiting competing communities and expanding their tax bases and resources as opposed to the City of Milton's. We also feel that this unfairly burdens those who are truly committed to investing in this community, building houses, building developments, moving here, staying here, upgrading their homes. It's these citizens who either decide to move here or decide to reinvest here that are going to be paying these fees. We also fear that the impact fee revenue, as it can't be used to fund the maintenance and operations or placement of the Parks and Rec projects. We fear what's going to happen once they've actually been constructed and what the funding will look like for their maintenance. It's the Realtors' hopes that a more restrained impact fee structure can be considered, and that this allows Milton to generate the necessary funding for these projects without the sticker shock to the real estate community that the maximum allowable fees is likely to create. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, you have one to read for the record?
And I have one more speaker and then one to
Oh, I'm
read.
sorry. Okay.
Mr. David Ellis.
Good evening. My name is David Ellis. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Greater Atlanta Home Builders Association. I live at 3795 Hedgecliff Court in Johns Creek, Georgia. And again, we spoke a few weeks ago, and some of our same concerns are here, in that the fees are, a way to fund infrastructure, but as they're implemented, if they go to the maximum level, I think it's going to have a real chilling effect on what good things that could happen in Milton, not only on the residential side of things, but on the commercial side as well. And I know we want to bring in good commercial development, and when you start extrapolating the numbers on what the effect will be on commercial, that can also be very problematic as well. As was mentioned in the last meeting, Ms. Field made a suggestion about maybe 50% on the parks, and let's revisit that plan and look at it and make sure it's appropriate for what we believe is a long-term good things that can happen here in Milton with that. I think that's probably at least a good approach to where we can go forward with these fees. Again, we join our friends in the real estate community with the Council for Quality Growth and the Association of Realtors, and asking you to look at some type of tiering or some kind of phasing in of these fees as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last comment is to be read into the record. It is from Mr. Jack Linden, 14810 East Bluff Road, Milton, Georgia, 3004. Dear City Council members, I am writing in support of the proposed impact fee ordinance. There appears to be little question about or opposition to the adoption of an impact fee ordinance. This is certainly a fair way to help pay for all the additional costs imposed on the city by our recent massive increase in housing development. The only debate seems to be on the amount of the fee. I have read the consultant's reports carefully, and all the fees discussed, including those associated with the increased need for parks and recreation facilities, are, in my view, well justified. I believe that the increases in parks and recreation costs will constitute the most significant burden imposed by our burgeoning population. For those reasons, I strongly support the adoption of the impact fee ordinance at the 100% level recommended by our consultants. Thank you very much for your consideration. Jack Linden.
Okay. If that's all our comment, then we'd like to hear the item.
This is the consideration to adopt the impact fee ordinance and to create Chapter 25 impact fees in the City Code of Ordinances. Agenda item number 15257, Ms. Kathy Field.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We're here to continue the discussion. We did have an extensive discussion, as you remember, at the work session a few weeks ago. Bill Ross is here as well. I do have a few things, though, I would like to start the conversation with. And first of all, it may be a matter of semantics, but I would like to clarify that when we had our discussion last, I did bring forth an option that you could consider in terms of lowering the amount of the park and rec category. I really want to clarify that it was not a recommendation. Staff is very cognizant of the fact that that's a policy decision to be made by the City Council. So I just wanted to clarify that. Secondly, there is a change in this ordinance from the first read to the second read, and specifically it deals with the exemption section, which is on page 11. The exemption section, as it was noted in the first read, did have specific language on the exemption policy. And just to refresh you, as you remember, the exemption speaks to outstanding economic development projects that you may want to exempt from impact fees. And as our consultant explained to you, with any exemption, the funds that are exempted need to be paid by the City Council, or by the City of Milton, rather, if indeed an exemption is granted. There was not a lot of specificity in this exemption section, however, and I felt that rather than opening up this ordinance again to insert exemption language should indeed a special economic development project come forward, that it would be more appropriate to insert the language now. So accordingly, I worked with our consultant and with our city attorney to more generalize the exemption policy language, and then to actually insert the process for approval of an exemption as well as the criteria that would be used for consideration of an exemption. And I would suggest that the language be inserted as it's currently shown, and that way it would be in place. We wouldn't have to go back in at a later date to insert it. So with that, our consultant is here, and we're both available to answer any questions you may have on this ordinance.
Okay. I'm going to start on a question that, based on the exemptions. I had mentioned early on, liked the idea that if we did have impact fees, in order to help with conservation or less density, that maybe we could use that as an exemption, as a bonus for, say, a developer or a property owner to possibly be exempt from the impact fees if they were to decrease their density in some form. You've got it stated that if it's in the public interest, would that be? Is that broad enough or vague enough that could be included, or how would we address something like that?
Do you want to take that, Bill?
These exemptions are extraordinary. Most of the benefits, and particularly the one you're talking about, would actually be calculated as a credit. And the credit section in the ordinance gives you it doesn't have to come to you at all if everybody agrees at the staff level, but the credit is calculated to the extent that anyone is doing something that is going to reduce the demand for services on the city, that a credit can be granted on that basis. And I think we used at the last time we made a public presentation, we talked about if someone was going to do, for instance, the 3-acre lot with conservation easement, et cetera, the credit can be calculated. If the applicant agrees, that's the charge. You don't owe anything to pay it back. You don't have, because that's the real fee that has been recalculated for that property. So most of those things, Mr. Mayor, will come out through the credit process. I think the exemption process is something that you just don't anticipate. It's of such value to the city that it's worth having the existing taxpayers support and help pay for it, because there's a big public benefit to you, and only you can decide what those benefits may be. But I think you will see exemptions requested on far fewer instances than credits will be calculated as we go along.
Okay. And Kathy, were you able to run some additional numbers based on percentages?
Yes.
We have.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think Chris will pass those out.
Okay, all right. The council. We'll open up to the council. Any questions? Bert?
Would you remind me again, Bill or Kathy, when are the fees collected? Is it, so say subdivisions go into residential subdivision, is it at LDP time and there's X amount of lots, or is it at building permit for each home that gets built? When are they typically collected?
The impact fee is assessed. Remember, assessing and collecting are two different things. Okay. The impact fee is assessed when a building permit is issued. Now, the person getting the building permit has an option to pay the impact fee right then and there, or to defer payment up to before a interior finishes permit, build-out permit, or a CO is requested. And you'll get both kinds of folks. There'll be people who just want to pay it up front. They don't have to come back down here a second time. Others will want to defer, but it still has to be paid before the CO is even.
So it's assessed / paid for per unit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Rick?
Yeah, can you comment on, as other cities have looked at impact fees or counties, the phased-in approach? I mean, I understand listening to folks, the logic, instead of just going from where we are today to all of a sudden hitting it full bore. Can you talk to me about how you've seen that work in the industry?
Very, very few. In fact, I can only think of one that attempted a phased-in approach, but rather short period of time they forgot they were phasing it in. Most folks just adopt whatever they're going to adopt, and from time to time they revisit those fees. And if they adopt them at a lower percentage, they have the opportunity to raise them at any time. It's just an amendment to the impact fee ordinance to replace attachment A current with new attachment A at a later date. So you can phase them in, but you can't do it automatically. You have to revise the impact fee ordinance because the fee schedule is right in the ordinance, and you can't automatically amend that. You have to take action to adopt a new fee schedule.
Okay, so if we did in fact want to go that direction, if that's the will of the council, or as we discussed through, we could set the initial fee at a certain level and then come to revisit on an annual basis or whatever and approach it that way.
Certainly.
Okay.
In order for us to amend the ordinance, what exactly would it require? Does it require several meetings in, or is it just a matter of we could decide on one meeting and advertise it and
right.
amend it then?
Right. So it depends upon the extent of the modification. Is candidly what I believe. Particularly if you're adding components to the tax, I think that you have to set up the advisory committee just like you did for the first go around. However, if it's a lesser modification, then I think it's just an ordinary ordinance modification process.
So if you were just going to say, let's start it off at 50% now, planning on adjusting it in to 100% at a later date, would that be a major one where you'd have to redo it? Or since we already had all the advisory committee look at it at that level, could we just 6 months or a year from now go up to the...
That would be my position, that you could do it as an ordinary ordinance modification.
So it doesn't require multiple meetings and everything else?
Not with the same formalities we've gone through at the initial section.
Okay. Brett?
If this was to go through this evening, would it be effective tomorrow, or is there a lead time to it?
Or maybe to clarify, does it have to go in immediately, or could it have a
You
lead time?
can set the to be effective date. I think there's a blank space. Ken, I think there's a blank space in the adopting ordinance that says it becomes effective blank, and you actually set. It could be tomorrow. It could be at a future date.
And we are prepared to do it if you desire. We are prepared to start tomorrow or any other day.
I've seen it done both ways. I've seen it done with an immediate effect, and I've seen it done with some lag time.
Okay, Matt?
I actually have a question for Sarah Ladart on this. On the commercial side, have we had any opinions from this whatsoever?
Really, all I've heard is things from developers, residential developers.
That's it.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment on that. When you look at it, we may not be promoting apartment complexes, but I think it was, about $1 million or more, or on a big shopping center. That's a pretty big impact fee. That would probably negatively impact in the commercial growth when you get to that size.
If I could interject, Mr. Mayor, that fee on that shopping center in that example would be an almost $15 million project given the size of that shopping center and the land. So when you run that down to what percentage of the development costs, you're still back down around 1% kind of level. And so it's sort of comparable to the residential in that 1.2% range as far as where the impact fees come in.
Yeah, or it's a couple of percent, maybe 2.25%, but it's just a big number. And again, I'm just bringing that up for discussion. Matt?
They were.
Joe?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would agree it's a big number, but at the same time, there was a very lengthy and logical process that we went through to derive these fees, and they actually represent the impact that these kind of projects have on the city and our resources and things of that nature. If we've got concerns about, the size of these fees and stuff like that, the real issue is going back and looking at our long-term plans and what we're trying to accomplish and ask ourselves, have we set the bar correctly? Are we trying to do the right things? And I would argue that we did all that right as well, because again, we spent a lot of time focused on those things. So sometimes it's hard to come to grips with the fact that, what we're doing and how it impacts our citizens can be summed up this way, but I mean, it is what it is, so.
I think we had some comments that kind of going 0 to 60 or 100 miles an hour. Well, just a few years ago, we did that with the city. Went from 0 to 60 overnight as well, and there's some stuff we're lacking on, and I think we've seen in our surveys that went out, Parks and Recreation and roads are quality of life issues that folks are very interested in and attuned to here, and things that we need to continue to get better.
Okay. Anybody else? Rick?
Yeah, question is, if someone's got an existing project, and let's say we adopt this, they're already in process, that's impacted as soon as we put the ordinance and make it effect, is that correct?
Whenever you begin to collect it, that's true, Councilmember Morag. In fact, in another jurisdiction I work in, we are looking at impact fees right now. And one of the arguments we've heard is that the pro formas for some of these developments are already sort of established, and that the imposition of these impact fees will sort of just take their financials and throw them out the window, because that's not how they base their financing. So, I mean, that's one of the rationales I'll leave that to the council to determine the legitimacy of that, but we did hear that concern.
Okay. Anybody else? I know that this latest handout I had asked Kathy to do, a spreadsheet based on, 100%, and this is based on the Parks and Rec, because that was the biggest proportion of this. So, basically you got with the maximum 100%, which, we're really talking the majority of properties this will affect is a residential home. So at 100%, it's 7,758. If you went to a 50% just on the Parks and Rec part, it puts it at $4,557. They did a 67% on the parks, which puts your impact fee for a single family home at $5,645. And if you drop the Parks and Rec portion down 75% to 75%, it would be $6,157. So if you want to compare that to other jurisdictions. Yep.
Ken, so we've got two opportunities to change impact fees on a project-by-project basis, or whatever unit we want to look at it, and that is through the credit process and also through the it's not deferment, exemption process.
Right.
So do we weaken or do we cause problems for ourselves if credits or exemptions are a regular thing with impact fees?
Well, yeah, again, I can only speak for my experience. My experience is that neither is routine. Credits is more likely. Exemptions is very unusual. So again, These are policy constructs built into your ordinance that you're contemplating that give you the flexibility. But my guidance would be to you is if you're going to begin looking at a case-by-case basis, tend to focus on credits and leave exemptions for the truly extraordinary situations.
Yeah, I would agree with you, since that's what we heard from our consultant. But I guess my point is, let's pretend for a second we go through 50 permits in the first 6 months, and every single permit winds up with a credit. Have we somehow weakened the city's position in terms of how we manage the impact fee itself, or would that be seen as just usual and customary?
From my perspective, I would, again, and probably our consultant can elaborate on this more than me, but I would not, that sort of scrutiny on individual by individual impact fee collections, I would not see that as customary. I would not see that as customary. I'm much more used to this being sort of one of those ordinances, and again, there may be more jurisdictions that do it differently, that it's in place, it's collected, and there are not a lot of situations where the credits are routinely offered. That's my experience.
We would have to define too, as a council, what credits, what that basis. Matt?
And would it be correct in saying to Joe's question, if we have, for some reason, not granted ourselves the money from an impact fee, then ultimately, if we are going to stick with a comprehensive transportation plan, we're going to have to come up with that money from some other place. Otherwise, we may not follow that comprehensive transportation plan if we choose not to do it, right? We kind of talked about that last time. We're not locking ourselves in anywhere. We're just having to find money from elsewhere to be able to pay for what we promised our residents we would do.
Being mindful that your ordinance contains, a fairly exhaustive protocol for the notion of credits, and in fact, fairly specific guidance on what those are, the sorts of improvements that you would then think were worthy of credits in the first place. So you already have, if you adopt this ordinance, you've got quite a bit of guidance on how to do that.
Okay.
Ken, let me add to that the credits are not a giveaway program. It's a recalculation of what that builder actually owes, what their real fee should be, and it's generally a reduction because maybe they're helping build the road instead of pay a fee, et cetera. So you're not losing anything. The fee goes down because they're doing something for the city of value.
But by the way of a system improvement.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's important as well, but yes.
Two other questions, and Kathy, maybe this is for you. There's a question of graduating, do the graduation process of a 50% fee versus 100% later on, or grandfathering those that may already be in effect. Is there a way to grandfather, or would you as a staff prefer, if we were to tiptoe into this, to do a graduation process?
When you say grandfathering, are you talking about projects or?
Yeah, someone's currently, I emphasize a little bit with those developers that had a financial model to begin building within the city of Milton. And if for some reason we jack up the rates on them mid-project, then that of course messes everything up. Is there a way to grandfather some of those projects, or would a graduation method be preferable?
If I just very quickly, and then I'll obviously defer to Kathy, but there is now grandfathering language in the ordinance already that provides that the portion of a project for which a valid building permit has been issued prior to the effective date shall not be subject to development impact fees so long as construction is ongoing. So that's already built in. I suppose the comment I was making to Councilmember Morag would have been with respect to those developments that are already in the development process, the expenditure process, but have not already carried through to the building permit issuance process.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Other than that, I'll defer.
Yeah, no, you basically, I think Ken answered it. If they haven't got a building permit, then they're not in the process, and that's really where the cutoff is.
So I don't think there really is any grandfathering, so to speak, because they've either got a building permit on an individual home or they haven't.
And forgive my still learning here. The developer will figure out their cost per unit before they ever submit a plan, but they get the building permits after they've submitted the plan, right? And as they go throughout the process. they don't get all those all at once at the very beginning, and they do it piece by piece as it comes on. So I think that's where the
Correct.
discrepancy is that, you know, their process is financial models ahead of time versus the building permit process is midstream.
That's right. When you're ready for the building permit, you're pretty far down the road in terms of the development process. And for instance, we have had many developers who've come in and we've talked to them about design and siting and stormwater facilities and all of that. And so they're still finalizing those plans, and so they're not ready yet for that building permit.
Right.
And that I think is what you're hearing from a few of those people this evening.
I think what we can do to kind of help mitigate some of that is if we do enact this, is to put a date out in the future, you know, whether it be 30 days, 60 days, something like that before it goes into effect.
I think if we do that, though, we're going to have a run on building permits for people.
For
Because
those that are ready, they will be. And if
Well,
they're
but
not-
you can get a building, well, I really think we're better off going ahead and having it enacted immediately at a lesser percent for the Parks and Recreation with the intent on down the road, you know, increasing it to whatever we feel like we need in order to, I mean, you got to remember, the whole purpose behind this is these are expenses we're going to incur as a city because of the new development.
Exactly.
Right.
And we calculated these values precisely. I mean, it wasn't like we just, you know, grabbed numbers out of the air. And so I worry about any kind of discount that we give. If taking the number that we know we have to collect and cutting it in half, to me, is saying, well, we're only really interested in delivering half the services or half the capability. And that doesn't make any sense.
You know, the only thing I would, and I'd see, you know, both points here, but keep in mind that 100%, the maximum amount that Bill's come up with is based on a plan that's up here. Now, that doesn't necessarily, we need to do a plan that's up here. That's the max of the high.
But it's based on our plan.
Mhm. It's based on a plan put in place.
Okay,
to
so
impose it.
that's a good question, Joe. Is the plan that we base these fees on our plan, or was it a concept that we had at the time and we just called it our plan?
You know, I'll let,
It's based upon Milton's
Kathy could
park and
probably,
train.
Exactly.
yeah, it's your adopted plan with the level of services that you adopted in there.
Exactly.
And I think going in, and I understand the point of it's arbitrary to go in at a 50 or 75 or 67% number.
I mean, to me, either we believe in the numbers or we don't. If we don't believe in the numbers, we need to step back 5 and recalculate, because we're telling people that we came up with these fees based on the plans that we want to enact. If we don't really believe that, then we shouldn't be voting on these. And which leads me to my question I was going to ask you, Ken. Are we going to be voting on this together, both the have impact fees and what level the fees are going to be at? Or do we split these into 2 pieces? Have impact fees, and then what level are we going to have the impact fees at?
Is it all one
It's all
order?
one
Yeah, I would say it's all one thing.
It's one.
Okay. Then that's going to make for a good discussion.
Rick?
Yeah, I guess I've been a proponent of impact fees. This dates back before we were the city of Milton, because I saw what happened in the part of the city where I lived, where we had apartment complexes and different housing things that would have a great impact on the city and on the area put in, and we didn't get the traffic improvements. We didn't get the lights and some of the things that would have been able to have been funded by that. I also, I guess, in listening to Karen and some of the notes that I've seen, I understand we have a maximum that we're going for, and this is what's maximum allowable. But from a signaling and working with folks, I'm okay with saying if we start out, we don't go the maximum day one, but then we revisit from a yearly standpoint. I guess I'm not opposed to doing that.
Well, I don't think it would hurt us to revisit what our plans are, that including the
Drove these
parks
numbers.
plan and the road plans and all that are driving the impact fee amount. So I don't think it would hurt us to revisit that. We know if we went in at 50% for the parks, we know we're still under what it's going to actually cost us to build out what we need for the city. So
I kind of agree. I think as much as we have the plan with what we're trying to do, you know, getting there is we have the strategic plan, but the tactics that we get there, we need to be flexible in. And, as much as we have our assets we want to do, we got to remember this is still about people. And I want to make sure that we work with those that are going to be working within our community. I just think that a graduation process, no one's opposed to us doing it at a maximum. I think down the future, it's just there could be a shock to a system that might impact some people a little more than we would actually imagine based on financial models. And I worry about having impartial subdivisions based on the process that they follow. All of a sudden, they have to change their financial models or create a lesser product halfway through. I wouldn't want to see that happen. So I'm okay with the graduating process. How we get there is going to be a question that we have to decide on, but that's where I'm leaning on this.
Joe?
I just want to remind everybody we've got a lot of parks and rec work that needs to be done in the coming years.
Yep.
If you go back to the citizen surveys that we conducted in just the past 3 or 4 years, almost to a survey, the number one thing that folks gave us feedback on was the lack of parks and recreation facilities in the city. Now, we're lucky we get to use other facilities that are nearby, but in terms of the city, we don't have very much. Okay? So this is real expense that the city had planned on having in order to develop the Parks and Rec resources that we have today. All right? That sit either undeveloped or, in the planning stages in terms of development. So there is going to be real money that gets spent. Mm-hmm. We calculated these impact fees based on a plan that we put together to do exactly that. Now, I have a problem with saying we went through the trouble, the work, the level of analysis that we did to come up with these numbers, and we're just going to discount it. That doesn't make any sense to me. If we and I don't have any worries about going from 0 to max or 0 to the real number as soon as we vote on this, because we've been talking about this for a year. There is nothing that should be a surprise about this to anybody. Okay? But if we haven't come up with the right figures, and if we're basing our impact fees on something that was more of a pipe dream than it was reality, then we need to step back and we need to recalculate that and set the number the right way. Otherwise, we're just fooling ourselves, and we're telling our citizens, yeah, we heard you, and we wanted to do this, but we just don't think we can ask for the money in order to get it done.
Would it be safe to say that, these numbers are based on a long-term plan, but that we wanted to do anyways, whether we brought in impact fees or not? This is a way that we can pay for it. Now, the one thing I will say, to your point, Joe, about the citizens and all our surveys, that's what people want. But keep in mind, those people, we're not asking those people that want it to pay for it. This is putting the burden on everybody new coming in afterwards. So if you split it a little bit, then you're also everybody's going to pay some taxes. So, just want to bring that point up.
I do have a question. If we do a graduating process at 50% and then we revisit in 6 months, I haven't done the math, but is there any idea from staff or anybody what we would miss on our impact fees? I guess we can. I don't know. I look at the houses and the ideas you have here on the
$3,200 per house.
And then how many houses we think we'd miss out on in 6 months?
There's really no way to even guess that.
I mean, that's, at the rate we're going, we have, 900 homes under construction right now? How many permits do we have per month?
Right now, residential permits issued year-to-date, 339.
That's over 9 months.
That's January through August, so
About 254 every 6 months, so 3,200 times 254.
if that's representative.
So
Let me just add that we've had a surge over the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we've had about 50 come in
because I knew we were doing this.
because of the impact fee. So you might want to add that, yeah.
That's why there's no need to delay it.
So it's about $500,000 in impact fees that we'd be missing over 6 months. maybe a little more than that. Now we have a number. So as a staff, if we were to reallocate a portion of our budget of $500,000 to make up for what we'd be missing on a graduated impact fee basis?
Sorry, ask that question again.
If we missed out on $500,000, 254, 75% of, well, year to date, we said how much? 339?
That's correct.
And that's year to date. That's, make sure I have the number right.
That's through August, so that does not include the surge we've had here in September.
Yeah, we've had a high of 75 permits in April.
I got a little off. It's about 300. Times 0.75, yeah.
So if we're going to consider, not this is risky to do, but if we're going to consider the first 8 months of this year to be equal in the world of calculating these types of numbers, you would say that you'd have 42 and a quarter houses a month, or over the course of 6 months, 253 and a half houses.
Right.
So with the disclaimer that I don't have anything that I can look at to say that that's a trend that has repeated itself that we would feel comfortable suggesting is a trend.
Sure.
That times the 3,200 is $811,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying too.
But we wouldn't have to go 6 months. We could go 3 months and increase it in 3 months if we wanted to, right?
Yep.
We could increase it up to 75% in 3 months and up to 100% in 6 months.
Or it's not an absolute. The plan and the improvements we want to do, you know, maybe it takes an extra year to do them or whatever. I kind of feel like we think we're getting a raise at work, and we've already went ahead and bought new cars and a boat. And the raise, we haven't gotten it yet. You know, the other option is you work a little harder an extra year and you save the money to do it. So it's not that if depending on where we land on this, it doesn't mean the plan's not going to be completed. It just may take a little, you know, another year or so if we delayed it. But that's,
What's the plan? Is it 20 or 25-year time plan?
I don't know off the top of my head. I could go pull it and figure it out. I can tell you the large thing that drives the costs associated with that park and trail plan is the trails themselves. So if you're looking at Milton's a very big city, and we did a trail plan that contemplated paved and in some cases non-paved multi-purpose trails throughout the city that actually get people places, which is the number one thing asked for in the citizen survey is multi-purpose trails. That's the driver of that cost.
And it's expensive to get from here to the Greenway too, as we're wanting to attach as well.
Linear parks are not cheap, but they're reasonable to maintain, which is it's a different thing than building a big active sports complex that all of a sudden your maintenance costs quadruple. The large driver of the plan is the trail system, which has, on a scale of economy, less expense with maintenance.
So if we were to all of a sudden have $200 million dropped on us tomorrow and we were able to build our linear trails, you wouldn't have a concern about maintenance going forward, cost-wise?
I would offer to you that I believe it would cost more than it costs us to maintain the trails we don't have today. But on a scale of mowing fields and trash pickup and collection at an active park, a much lesser scale.
okay. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick one. The question was about when was that, how far out does that master plan go for Parks and Recreation? Something we really haven't talked about, but it's intrinsic in here. Over the next 20 years, in 2035, you're going to be done. The city will be built out. Whatever you do between now and the next 20 years is what you're going to end up with. Beyond that, of course, there's always maintenance, replacement, and you could even do more Parks and Recreation. But in essence, the Parks and Recreation improvements in here take you the 20 years to 2035, and at that point, you don't have any more growth. You don't have any more. Nobody else is paying impact fees at that point because you're done.
Anybody else have anything?
I guess that comment is assumption then at 2035 we're totally built out. Is that from Parks Plan, or are you saying we're built out as a city?
The
So
city.
we're assuming development for the most part is done. So we won't be collecting any more impact fees because we're
Yeah.
already.
The land will be used up, let me put it that way.
Right.
Because we're clearly, that's one of the challenges we have, both with our roads, our parks, everything, as we continue to escalate, this becomes a place that people want to move
We
to.
will have exhausted the funding source that the impact fee identified.
Yeah, granted, just to a good extent, but also you may have redevelopment at that point
Right.
of older homes and whatnot. You just you'll have a much bigger tax base to, fund some of these parks and things like that, improvements.
It is a 20-year plan.
So, and that's another point to this, because if our ability to change our taxes to, help support the work that we want to do for Parks and Rec or anything else is, I won't call it limited. It's just that we have to get it on the ballot and the citizens have to approve whatever it is we do in terms of changing our millage rate. And that's one of the challenges that we have, and I thought that that's why the impact fee gave us a certain amount of flexibility to address real costs that we were experiencing in order to deliver the services that our citizens were demanding from us without having to change the property tax. Okay? And since these impact fees represent the actual amount that these projects have with regards to these resources, it seemed like a very equitable concept. You're only paying for the impact that you're actually having on these resources. So to me, it just makes sense for us to agree that that's why we put them in place to begin with and adopt them. Otherwise, we're out of sync with ourselves, which I have a real problem with saying, well, I know we calculated the fee to be that, and that really represents the cost, but you know what? We're just not going to do that. We're going to do something else. To me, all of a sudden, we've lost sight of what we set out to do.
See, I would disagree a little bit, in all due respect, that when you call it an impact fee, if it is actually infrastructure, as in a road failure and having to redo roads and all, but for example, Parks and Rec, the trail plan, that's a plus. That's something that everybody's going to enjoy, not just the folks that from now on out are going to pay for, but our existing citizens. And again, like I say, we may be capped at our millage rate, but you go out to 2035, whatever the number is, we're going to have double the number of homes here, so our revenue is going to be double too.
Right.
So,
But Joe, the impact fees don't represent the entire cost. They only represent the cost that is contributed from each individual project, whether it's an apartment complex or an individual home. So we're not asking for something more than what they should pay. We're saying that the folks that already live in the city have already done work through previous tax payments that they've made to get to this point. And correct me, Bill, if I'm getting any of this wrong.
There is even more money that you will have to look to the existing tax base to pay because the level of service is higher than what you've got right now.
Right.
So the folks who are here today will pay their fair share toward those improvements. Future development will pay their fair share. And that's the key to it, fair share. I heard somebody earlier say the cost burden was greater on future development than the existing taxpayers. That's just not true. The whole thing behind impact fees is everybody only pays their fair share.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
I'm willing to make a motion if we're finished with
Sounds like we may
discussion.
have a minute, so, go ahead and open up for motion, and we can discuss it if made. So, Councilmember Thurman.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve for consideration to adopt the impact fee ordinance and to create Chapter 25 impact fees in the City Code of Ordinances, agenda item number 15-257, as presented by staff, except and to be effective immediately, except for the park and recreation fee at 50% of the fee schedule that is the attachment to the ordinance, with the thought that we will relook at this in 3 to 6 months.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Thurman with a second from Councilmember Coons, basically for approval of the ordinance, except changing the Parks and Rec portion to 50% And again, I don't know if you word in there that with the intent to look at in 3 to 6 months, but I don't know if that needs to be separate. I'm hearing that.
I'd like, if you could land on either 3 or 6 or 4, but if you could land where you want it to be, that way I'll know when to have it back in front of you. That would, if you give me a range, it will be back within the range, but if you want to be more specific than that.
That's up to the maker. Do you want to, in the second, do you want to clarify that?
Well, I'll say then April 1st, that's 6 months.
Okay.
That will give us time to relook at our Parks and Rec projected cost and everything and make sure that it's where we need to be.
I'll hold my second.
Who's second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Then I'll open up for discussion. Anybody have any?
Well, I'll just say I support the impact fees, but I'd like to see them all at 100%.
I agree with that.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify with Councilmember Thurman that what I think you started the conversation off with this question, and I continue to believe that with respect to that revisit we're talking about, minimum standards of the statute, which is 2 public hearings, not the full advisory committee, the full, no. Thank you.
All right, any more discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That looks like that passes city 4-2. Okay. City, if you would please call the next item in new business.
The next item is an administrative hearing related to alcohol license. Administrative hearing regarding the possible suspension or revocation of the alcohol license for CCE Group, Inc., doing business as Montana's Bar and Grill, located at 13695 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 3004. This is agenda item number 15258. It was deferred at the September 21st City Council meeting. Mr. Chris Lagerblum.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this was before you before, and Mr. Eubanks was here, requested a couple of extra days to be able to obtain his business license. I can tell you and report to you that within that week, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, that he infected that it's now in compliance with all the necessary permitting to be able to continue his operation as a restaurant, both with a business license and an alcohol license. Our code is a little bit specific in the fact that we've gotten this to this point in the process, meaning it's come before the council for an administrative hearing. And the code kind of indicates what, in fact, you would do as a result of it coming forward in the form of this hearing. If, in fact, you feel as though at any point he was not in compliance with the code as it needed to be, I don't know that I would sit here tonight and recommend that now that he's in compliance, we continue to seek a suspension, but more that we just issue a formal warning in this that he comply with the dates moving forward. And that would end this particular process, and it'll be back in front of you with that track record if it needs to again. But I think there needs to be some action,
yes,
and the code really allows for either a warning or a suspension. So my recommendation to you tonight is that we just issue a warning.
Okay. Do I have any questions or comments to staff on this?
So a warning has no financial impact. It's just a notification that next year we're not going to be as lenient from a timing point of view.
Well said. That's typically the case in most jurisdictions, is the warning has no immediate consequence, but it has a most assured future consequence.
Okay.
I'd just like to make sure the next, it doesn't go as long next year if this happens again.
Right.
Yep, I agree.
Karen?
When he paid for his business license, did he have to pay a penalty for late filing?
Yes, ma'am.
Joe?
So we need a motion then? Okay, so I move that we administer.
Just issue a warning.
Issue? Okay. I move that we issue a warning to CCE Group Incorporated, doing business at Montana's Bar and Grill, located at 13695 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004, in the case of agenda item number 15-258.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Morrig, to issue a warning on this to the owner. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, next thing we'll move on to reports. First thing I just want to say, and thank everyone from our staff, council, citizens, vendors, volunteers for Crabapple Fest. I think it went very well, the event, and it was, I think, very well attended based on the weather, and I expected to go out there and see no one out there, so there was a lot of folks out there, so, and seemed to really enjoy it. So anyways, just a thanks for everybody involved, and what a success that was. And I've said this all along, some of those are the type of things that, you know, we sit here and talk about infrastructure and bricks and mortar and things like that we do as a city, but you know, where I think the real benefit is when we have community, we're building a community, and events like that really do help. So thank you guys for everything you did on that. And council, anybody? Matt, you want to talk about the football game right here?
I hadn't mentioned it at all.
I'm
This season.
I'm not sure any of us want to talk about football games this late.
I think we've all got one
We beat
loss.
San Jose State. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right, well,
A few
then,
upsets.
we'll, move on to
Floyd Carter's going to talk. He's the only one undefeated
we'll
up here.
move on to
There you go. You've got next week, Jim.
all right, so we'll move on to staff.
We've got some published ones tonight. I think we'll start, though, before we can do this, and we'll pitch it over to Carter. He didn't know I was going to do this, so he looks like, uh-oh, what's coming? Maybe he can give you all a quick update as to where we are with the Bell Memorial Park construction, and then also take a couple of seconds and maybe just talk to you about where we are with respect to the new City Hall construction as well, just so you have some up-to-speed dates as to when we think certain things are going to happen.
Thank you. I'll start with Bell Memorial Park. Is that on? Starting with Bell Memorial Park, we've been working here over the past couple of weeks through our various weather windows that we've had available to us. As I mentioned last week, weather just did not permit us to open on our original date of October 3rd, but we've been working through this week. We do anticipate having the fields available to us for October 10th to get the kids on the fields and playing this weekend. What that means is basically we're finishing up the core portion of the park, so the ball fields, the concessions, the plazas, those things in the center of the park. And we'll continue to work on the outlying areas as the trails and the maintenance facilities as we move forward. But it will give us an opportunity to get those programs that we've gotten up and running on temporary fields moved over into the new park, all three, the baseball, lacrosse, and football programs up and running. So if there is any change to that, I don't anticipate that there will be. We'll definitely get word out on that as soon as we can, but right now we are anticipating moving forward with the ribbon cutting Saturday, October 10th. Looks like we'll have good weather all week and through the weekend. The City Hall project, we are moving towards construction documents on the City Hall project. We've been pushing through some value engineering efforts on that through our design development documents. So we're now moving from design development and on into construction documents, which we hope to have finished up middle of December. Working with New South as our chosen contractor on that through our CM at Risk program. So he'll be working on bidding that program with opening February 2017 is when we anticipate getting into the building and actually beginning operations April 2017. What was the other one I was?
Those two.
Okay. Can I move right into mine and just finish it off?
Sure.
Because that rolls right into the other project, which is the road project, the Northwest Connector Road that we've been looking at with GDOT. That project is currently out to bid. We'll be getting bids back on that, or GDOT will be getting bids back on that particular project in 2 weeks, around October 16th, I believe. So we'll have an idea on funding strategies as soon as we see what those bids come in at. Got another project out, Deerfield at Webb. We'll be doing some turn lane improvements there, installation of left turn lane on the 3 approaches that don't have them currently, so that's out to bid, just in case you wanted to know that. October 27th, we'll be getting those back in. Winding down pavement management this year. We've got 2 more projects to go. We're working on Providence Road in front of Summit Hill Elementary School. We've held that project off until this week. They've got 4 days off for a long weekend this week, so we'll be doing that during their holiday, as well as Broadwell Road. We'll be going back down there and doing some improvements down there. To wrap that up, you've probably noticed some striping with the current paving. Striping project will be coming in right after that to redo all the striping in those areas that have been paved and patched here. Gave you a quick update on Bell 372. That's it for me. Thank you.
I got a Carter question. I hadn't been up lately, but how is the, I know they started on the roundabout up at Birmingham and Hopeful, I guess. And
It is. We're working through with Sonny
utilities
still
too.
to get some of those utilities relocated, but they are moving forward on that. I would anticipate we're probably a little bit behind on that one, but hopefully we can catch up once we get all those utilities relocated.
Thank you.
Are all the trees that have been hit in the roundabout at New Providence, Birmingham Highway being replaced?
It will be.
It will be, okay, because I noticed that I think every tree in the middle of the roundabout is now down.
Those were taken out.
Yeah, the GDOT came
Some of them
through
were
and-
hit and some of them were taken down, yeah.
Yep, that's still under the contractor's control, so they're still responsible for that landscaping, and as soon as they finish up all their contractual obligations with GDOT, eventually that will come over to us to maintain that center island.
Is there a good, and I was listening, I didn't hear you say it, is there a timeline when the connector is going to be completed? Crab Apple?
It's an 18-month project once they get started with it.
So we'll be able to get into our building by the road when it's all.
We hope that all works out. Yes, sir.
Does highlight again the fact that we need to be working on a name for that street.
Yeah.
So be thinking about that. I know
That's right.
probably sooner rather than later we need to be having a serious discussion of what the name of that street is.
Okay.
Other duties as assigned.
Not Main Street.
All right. Anybody else from Public Works? All right. Let's have Chief Prokoff do a quick update. He has successfully jumped through every hoop the great state of Georgia has made him jump through to be a chief in Georgia. We don't make it easy, so congratulations.
Thank you. It's been an interesting 6 months. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I will be quick. Just a couple of things I wanted to bring you up to speed on. One thing we are starting to explore, sorry about using the word, but an Explorer program for the Milton Police Department. Actually, Andy Noblet, when he's not doing court security, is actually spearheading that for us. And he's working together with some of the other municipalities locally that already have Explorer programs and some other entities that could be feeder programs for the Explorer program. What an Explorer program does, for those that may or may not be familiar with it, it offers great opportunities for the community, specifically members of our youth that have interest in the criminal justice field. It creates great relationships between the officers and those youth. They get involved with great opportunities. They do real life police stuff, and they get into competitions. It's great opportunities. They wear uniforms. They would be at things like Crab Apple Fest, and it really does bring together a police department and its community. So we're hoping. Right now, we're exploring whether or not we can get that up. Somewhere early in the year. We're reaching out to see what kind of interest we have. We're working with both Cambridge and Milton High Schools to see where we can cultivate there. And again, as we said, places like the Boy Scouts, things like that, to see what kind of interest we're going to have to make sure that the program is viable. Preliminarily, it appears that we have quite a bit of interest, so we're excited about that opportunity to move that forward. From a budget standpoint, obviously we didn't budget for this in 2016. I believe that we will have the seed money to be able to create the program outside of the budget. And if we structure this correctly, we hope we can make this kind of a self-sustaining operation with very little budgetary impact going forward after 16. Just to make you smile. The second thing I just want to bring you up to speed on, I don't know if I brought it to the council yet, but I have been working with U.S. Attorney John Horn on a project to reduce the effects of opioid addiction and abuse in the metro area. He has put together a very impressive group of local law enforcement, public health officials, judges. I mean, he's really put together a great group, and I've had the good fortune of being involved and actually got to organize the legislative subgroup. And we're meeting tomorrow morning, actually, down in the city to talk about some of our strategies going forward to be able to reduce that. Some of the now this is a very wide group. There are several subgroups. Some of the things we're looking at from the legislative subgroup, and I'm open if anybody has any interest in feeding some ideas. But two things we are looking at right now as far as impacts are the current availability of naloxone. Some of us know it as Narcan. It's an antagonist. It stops the effects of an opioid. It's what you've seen if you've ever seen it on TV. A lot of times you'll see paramedics use it when someone's overdosing on an opioid. They inject it, and all of a sudden the person, it reverses like that. So much so, in my history, I've gone from thinking someone was deceased to ending up chasing them. And it's it really is.
Medium in there?
The reversal is quite quick. So we're looking at seeing how we can end up, how we can get that. Right now, it's only available by prescription. We're going to see how we can create wider availability to that, to be able to get that out to the hands that need it, to be able to reduce some of the devastating effects and mortality associated with it. One of the other things we're looking at is the improvement of the current PDMP. It's the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. It was put into effect a couple of years ago. It's a good first step in reducing the supply of prescription opioids in the black market, and we're looking to see how we can improve upon what's already there. I just wanted to bring you up to speed on what I was working on in that capacity. Any questions?
Questions?
Joe? The only thing I'd add is I've got, I was a previous district chair for the BSA for the district that Milton sits in, and I know the current district chairman, so if you need help on the Explorer program, just let me know, because I can get you you may already be in contact with all the right folks down at the council office, but this is the kind of thing that they always look very favorably on, so they'll be willing to, send resources out here, help you get organized, do all kinds of stuff in order to stand up a new Explorer post.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to Jim with Parks and Rec.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First thing I want to let you know is we had a success story at Providence Park this 2 weekends ago. A contingent of approximately 30 scouts and leaders from Troop 3000 took on the project of renovating the Southwest Trail, which went from the maintenance building all the way down to the amphitheater. And they've done quite an effort to improve that facility, and then they cleaned up the amphitheater area itself to make it useful again. This is one of several scout projects that we are going to be doing at Providence Park. Great appreciation of Troop 3000, and what we're trying to do right now is, while there are some very sizable projects that we as a city will have to fund for Providence to improve it, there's also things that the community can do, and so I'm trying to tap that resource and get as much involvement there as we can. So that was a huge success, and we're very happy and pleased with that. It was led by a young man named Matthew Reck, 17-year-old Milton High School student who's working on his Eagle Scout, and so this was his Eagle Scout project, and huge success. And in fact, there's a small codicil in the rules for going for your Eagle Scout. They have to fund the project itself, and so he did fundraising, and he exceeded the amount raised compared to what he actually spent. So he came in last week and made a donation to the city of $493, which we've put into a fund to save for projects happening at Providence Park. So overall, it's a huge success.
Right.
So thank you for that. I would like to take a minute and thank you all for the support in this year's budget of changing the recreation coordinator to a recreation manager job. We appreciate that very much. We now have that out on the street, and we're getting quite a bit of activity there. And I think, if we're very confident, that we're going to have a very high-quality person in place soon. Currently working out our details for our winter basketball program. We've been having some challenges with some of the schools. We've got increasing demand for basketball and unfortunately not an increasing amount of space to hold basketball, so that's presenting quite some challenges to us. We have very good news with regard to Camp Joyful Souls. The principal at Hopewell Middle School has invited us back for next summer. And while we very much appreciated the Church of Christ, Community of Christ Church, rather, for opening their doors to us, the facilities at Hopewell Middle School better fit the needs for Camp Joyful Souls. So we already have one of our supervisors confirmed coming back for next year, and we're off to a good start in planning for that as well. We have received and are currently reviewing an RFP for Bell Memorial Park maintenance. This is the maintenance inside the fields, the 4 ball fields and the 2 rectangular fields. That was a 30-day RFP. They came in last Thursday, and we're reviewing them now. And this Thursday, we will be getting back RFPs, which are on the street right now, for a concession stand operator. And that's my whole report. Are there any questions I can help you with?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Navy is undefeated, by the way.
I know. We have you guys next.
As we're waiting on Kathy, I guess, to come up, I'll tell you, Carter just let me know he just saw a word come in if anybody's interested that they'll have the crane and the piece of public art at the park for installation on Thursday morning at 10:30. If anybody's one of those that just wants to see that part of the park expansion happen, come on by Thursday at 10:30. Okay, Kathy.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. There are several items that I would like to make you aware of that are in the queue, so to speak, that will be coming before you. The first one is the Conservation Subdivision Ordinance. It is scheduled for the agenda of November 16th, so you'll be seeing it then. The next one was the Impact Fee Ordinance, which you approved this evening. Just to let you know that we will start collections tomorrow morning, first thing. The next item is the 5-year update to the city's 2030 Comprehensive Plan. I'm very pleased to say that as of tonight, including the Impact Fee Ordinance, we have accomplished everything that was listed in that 5-year plan. And tomorrow, we kick off the new 5-year plan. And the staff members from the ARC will be helping us with that plan, and it's our intent with their assistance to do that in-house. So you'll be hearing more about that as it progresses. We have some rezonings that will be coming before you. The first is the Montessori School at 3503, 3505 Bethany Bend. They will be asking for a rezoning and a use permit because they will be expanding that school. And you'll see that next week on the 19th, or in 2 weeks, rather. The next rezoning is at 13650 Bethany Road, and they are requesting a use permit for a retreat on that site. They will be using the existing house on that site for the retreat, and that will be coming before you on November 16th. Thirdly, there is an infill rezoning at 13201 Deerfield Parkway. And so for apartments, they want to revert back from the form-based code zoning to the original zoning on that apartment site, and that is a requirement of some financing. They're refinancing, and that is a legal requirement that they need to meet. So you'll be seeing that rezoning on December 21st. Next, we have a whole series of text amendments, and they deal with enhancing single-family zoning districts to increase the rural view shed, to do a lot of other conservation-related activities. And so those will be coming before you on November 16th. And we also have consideration to create a new use permit for alternative housing for seniors in the AG1 and some of the other single-family residential districts. We've already started meeting with representatives of seniors to sort of sort through what type of housing that they would prefer. And so you will be seeing that on December 21st. And then lastly, also on December 21st, we are amending the sign ordinance based on the recent Supreme Court decision. So those changes will also come before you on December 21st. So that's sort of what's in the queue for the rest of the year. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving on to economic development.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Update y'all on a few things. The Innovation Center, I met with Verizon about 6 weeks ago to talk to them about them allowing us to have some space for free, calling it the Verizon Innovation Center in the city of Milton. Steve seemed very open to the idea. He's going back, he's talking with his people. He said that they've never done that before, but he didn't know if that was because nobody had asked or because it wasn't something that they did. So, and his other main concern was security. How do we allow our people into our section without giving them access to the whole building? I thought that would simply be a wall, but he's asking around about that. The South by Southwest trip, I was asked to be on the executive committee, and I'm over getting the cities and government involved with that. We have a $295,000 budget for that trip, not Milton, the whole metro, Atlanta. So we're going to have a really serious impact there. And Mayor, you met the two ladies from Circle Interactive who are located in the city of Milton. They have a really cool technology. They're doing the stadium that's being built in LA, football, whatever team is moving to LA.
Raiders.
They are in charge of like these wristband technology. You're not going to have a ticket anymore when you go to a football game. You're going to have a bracelet. You're not going to use your credit card. It's all going to be loaded on your bracelet. If you like, Roddy White, when you walk in, the ads are going to be of Roddy White. It's this whole technology that they're developing right here in Milton. And in 2016, they're looking to hire 15 to 20 employees with a range of $65,000 to $100,000 salaries. So that's pretty cool going on right here. They thought they were in Alpharetta. And I told them they were in Milton, had the mayor come over, and they were like, hi, we're so happy to be in the city of Alpharetta. I was like, you're in Milton? So they're going to figure that out. I think I'm going to send them like a goodie bag of Milton stuff so that they get the picture they're in Milton.
Or tax bill.
Tax bill.
Yeah, tax bill too. That works. The North Fulton Hospital Power of Pink event was a couple weeks ago. We raised $50,000 for breast cancer research that night. And all that money stays in Metro Atlanta. It goes to Susan G. Komen of Metro Atlanta. And Karen was also involved in the Economic Development Summit that Progress Partners did. She was on a panel. We had about 200 attendees to that, and that's going to start to be an annual thing that we do with Progress Partners and the Council for Quality Growth. And then Progress Partners they've employed Market Street to do a market study and to see where, because like we've spoken about, when Progress Partners was started, the cities didn't have economic development people. Now we all do. So what role can Progress Partners play, and what should they be doing? So they're doing a huge study on that. I met with them today. I think Chris and the mayor are meeting with him later this week. And I was really honest with him. I know Alfreda and Roswell were really honest with him. So he has said that they're going to get some really good feedback on what exactly it is that they need to do to make Progress Partners sustainable and make us just say, you don't even have to come to Waldron. We're just going to give you the money. You're doing such great things, and we need you so much. So that's their goal, and they're working on that. That's all I have. Is that good? Any questions?
All right. Thank you. Any questions, sir? Okay.
That was an abrupt ending. I chuckle because When I was at the ICMA conference last week, one of the best sessions that I attended was called Millennials in Management. And it just started and then they just stop. And I think it's awesome. Council, if you've got any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Would like to see you Thursday if you have an opportunity to come by the park. That'd be great.
What time would that be?
10:30.
10:30.
And Saturday?
We'll have information. I'd like to get through tomorrow morning's construction meeting that happens first thing at the site, just to make sure before we release that date and time publicly. So watch for something in your email box tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. We'll get you up to speed on when, where, what time, all that good stuff.
But the intent is it's probably sometime Saturday morning?
Because there'll be a full day of play at the
Okay.
park. So yes, you can anticipate it to be before 10 o'clock, probably earlier.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you. We didn't have any agenda items for next Monday night's meeting. We had one, but it was one that was not worth bringing a whole assembly of people together for a workshop. So that's why that meeting we canceled. We'll put that item on November. We do anticipate additional items on the November work session.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that concludes our meeting. I'll open up for a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll say no because I enjoy being with you guys.
That's unanimous.